Corinne. I appreciate that great intro. How's everybody doing tonight? Everyone's good? Good thumbs up. Awesome. Nice to see some friendly faces here. Tonight we're gonna show you how to cook from your pantry, simple things, easy substitutions, and also ways that you can utilize things a little bit differently in your pantry. We're gonna make a vegan chocolate cake. We're going to make a couple different kinds of pantry pasta. We're going to do a tuna, lemon, and caper pasta. We're also going to do a soba noodle carbonara, very non-traditional, but we're not in Italy, so it's okay. And we're also going to show you how to do a lemon or citrus rind syrup that you could use in drinks, just so that we can reduce waste. I found that myself, a lot of my friends, we've been going out a lot less to the grocery store. We're really trying to utilize what we have. And it not only, that's a good thing to do, even if you're not in the situation that we're in now. It's a good thing to try to not waste food. It's a good thing to try to utilize what you have. So let's get rolling and let's get started. So the first thing we're gonna make today is my vegan chocolate cake. This is my go-to chocolate cake. I know it practically from memory. It's very easy. It has no eggs, no butter. It can be made with things that are just in your pantry. So let's get started. We're gonna take a cup of warm water, which we have here. I had a friend ask me, this is actually a little too full. I had a friend ask me about the difference between liquid and dry measuring cups and did it matter? And I said, well, it does matter, but if you've been making it the same way the whole time and you like how your cookies or whatever you're making are coming out, then don't change what you're doing, but you should know that you should generally measure your liquid in a liquid container and your dry in a dry measure. So to that, we're gonna add half a cup of oil here. This is canola oil, but you could use any, this is 1/3 of a cup. You can use any kind of oil that you want. So we're just gonna mix wet and dry together. I have a teaspoon of vanilla and a teaspoon of vinegar. You can use any type of vinegar you want. I have apple cider here. I've even used balsamic, honestly. And we're just gonna whisk to combine. You're not really gonna get it emulsified, you're just gonna whisk it. Now, in my bowl, we're gonna add 1.25 cups of all-purpose flour. I have cheated before and used a little bit of whole wheat in this if I didn't have quite enough of the all-purpose. But you do want to try to use the all-purpose. I generally would use an unbleached flour, but flour is hard to find these days. Use what you can. This is a very forgiving recipe. To that flour, we're going to add 1 cup of sugar, just regular granulated sugar. I'm going to stir to combine. Now, in the meantime, I'll have you know that I have already set my oven to 350. I have my oven thermometer in there. I always make sure that any oven I work with, I put a thermometer in there to make sure that I'm getting the right temperature. Ovens can vary. As a personal chef, I often work in a lot of different kitchens, and I'm always very aware of variations in temperature. All right, so that's nicely combined. To that, we're going to add 1/3 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. You don't want to use anything that you would actually make cocoa with. Nothing that's like from a packet. You want to use just the regular. Hershey's Extra Special Dark is nice. I like Valrhona as well. Mix that in. And then we're also going to add a teaspoon of baking soda and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So this gets mixed together. And you just want to mix this together until it is combined. Okay, I should have used another whisk, but I think I only have the one whisk, so that's okay. All right, so to this, we're gonna add our wet mixture. In we go, we don't have to be fussy. And we're gonna stir. Now, I found that this cake batter actually likes to be stirred just 1 tick more than you would a cake batter that you might do from a mix or anything. I really like to just stir it until there are no more lumps in it and everything is together. You'll get kind of a pretty smooth, glossy batter. It already smells delicious. Now, you can do this in a square tin or you just in a round tin. I happen to have a round cake tin here. I made a little parchment round. You don't have to do this, but I just like the extra insurance. Use a little baking spray. And if you don't have baking spray, that's okay. You can just use oil or butter and a little flour or even cocoa powder. I just tap it around the pan. We're going to spray the parchment paper too. Okay, so that's ready to receive our batter. So this will go in the oven for about 25 to 30 minutes, depending on your oven. I put this in the upper middle rack. And this is really great. Wait till you see how this comes out every time. Really good. Okay, and we go. And we are at 350 on the dot. Set our timer. 30 minutes. Okay, so that's that. So we will make dinner in the meantime. I know I'm hungry. It's going to be around that time. So let's get started. So we're going to chop a little parsley to start. Fresh herbs really help your food. I found that the best way to keep herbs fresh is to wrap them in a lightly damp paper towel, put them in a baggie if it's just open a crack, and leave that in your fridge. Now is about the time when you can actually grow your own, which is very nice. So this is probably the last bunch of parsley that I buy for quite a while. And our water's boiling. Now, let's talk about salting pasta water. So you want it to taste salty. So I've got probably, I don't know, a third of a cup of salt here. I'm going in with a big, like that. I might even do another one. You're not eating all that salt. It's just seasoning the pasta. Now, I think that's the biggest difference between home cooks and chefs, is chefs know how to season their food all the way through. If you don't want to have a lot of sodium for health reasons, you can still salt your pasta water. It's not going to add a lot of extra sodium to your food, but it is going to just make everything taste a little bit better. It's especially important if you are watching your sodium to do it here, because this is what's going to have the most impact and really help heighten all those flavors. And then you don't have to add quite so much at the end. So for this recipe, I like to use something that has some little ridges, something like a shell would be nice, a medium shell. I happen to have gemelli on hand, so we're going to use that. And I'm going to do this to feed about 4 people, so I'm going to use the whole container. There we go. And that'll go for 6 minutes. Okay. Give that a stir. Now, while that's going, we're going to prepare our mixture. So I've got my parsley. We're also going to add some chopped capers. I'm going to get my little bowl here. So I like to not waste anything in the kitchen. Everyone's sort of getting very acquainted with their pantry these days, and so I tend to always have canned tuna on hand. I often will have tuna in water, but I occasionally will also buy a few cans of tuna in oil, olive oil. They make a lot of interesting flavored ones, and those are good too. This dish is also a great application if you have any fancy tuna that comes in the glass jar that you save for a rainy day. This is a good time to use that. Don't save it till it's not good anymore. So I'm going to use 2 cans. If you only have one, it's okay. It's basically just you want to be able to have a little bit in every bite. This is a great way to stretch that. Now, if you don't have tuna, but let's say you have canned salmon, that's also a really good thing in this. Just maybe pick up the bones slightly, because canned salmon tends to have bones. So we're going to have this go in. And also, if you have, you can make this recipe go with almost any kind of protein. So a little bit of rotisserie chicken chopped up, not a bad idea. Diced ham or any kind of meat, maybe not so much something like beef, but almost anything else will be fine. So I've got my tuna here, I've got my parsley, and I don't really measure the parsley. I do kind of a handful. Don't use dried in this. The only one I would recommend if you're going to use anything like that is freeze-dried herbs. You can get them in the produce section. Most dried herbs, unless they're absolutely fresh, really don't have a ton of flavor. If you look at your herbs and you can't smell anything and you taste them, they don't taste like anything, guess what? They're too old. Get rid of them. That's, I think, something that a lot of us have come to terms with as we've been stuck at home, maybe trying to do a recipe and realize that, oh my gosh, this herb that I have is just no longer good. It's dust. All right, so we're gonna add our capers, and I think I did about a tablespoon here chopped. If you have the kind that come in salt, you're going to want to rinse them off a little bit because it'll be a little bit too salty. If you don't have capers, you could also use a handful of olives of any type you like. Add that. We're also going to add juice of half a lemon. I'm going to chop up a couple of garlic cloves too. Now to this, I'm going to add a little bit of garlic oil. Now, some people don't like garlic. That's okay. I'm going to show you a trick to get great flavor without having any garlic in the mix. Now, I leave it in, but if you want, what I'm about to do, you can just go ahead and just turn this burner on. I'm going to do probably about 2.5 tablespoons. So I'm gonna give this just a light sizzle in the oil, and then if you don't like garlic, then you can just pull it out. You don't have to use it. If you don't have fresh garlic, don't stress out. Just put about half a teaspoon of powdered in here. It'll be fine. It won't be quite as great. And then just add a little bit more olive oil to taste when you put the pasta in. So, all right, I'm gonna add a little bit more oil. Add some freshly ground pepper. I like a lot of pepper. Some people don't like as much. Just a little bit of extra salt. I'm not going to add a ton because capers are salty, so just a pinch of that. We're going to also add the zest of a lemon. I always zest my lemons, and as you'll see later, I save all my citrus rinds. I'm going to show you what to do with those. Put that in. Okay. And now, I like to add a little boost of flavor, so I'm going to use an anchovy. I know that these are a little bit controversial, but I really find that if you use them with a light touch, it is a delicious addition and adds a certain je ne sais quoi to a recipe. So I'm just going to mix it up a little bit and add some of our garlic here. Let's see if I can my knife. I've never really had anchovies or anything like that on pizza, but I do really like it in pasta. Now we're about ready with the pasta. So a little trick that I like to do is I like to put my little cup here in my, I'm not going to use a colander, so I'm going to kind of scoop it out, but I like to put this in to remind me to save some pasta water. This is really going to help with our sauce. And the last thing I'm also going to do is, now this recipe is supposed to be with peas. Two things at once here. Okay, so you can see here we've got our garlic going, and this is sizzling pretty well. And so actually I don't want it to brown, so I'm actually just going to pull it off. I'm going to pull it off the heat so it doesn't burn. But okay. All right. Right before I pull the pasta, I'm going to throw in a little bit of chopped broccoli. I was supposed to use peas. I thought I had peas. I did not have peas. I was not going to make a separate trip to the store. Nobody's going in the store for just one thing. This is a recipe. It's very flexible. You can add any little bits of vegetable that you want. So I'm going to dump this in just in the last few seconds of cooking. And that's just going to give it a quick blanch. And it's going to be really nice and cooked. All right. So we're going to mix up our tuna mixture here. And before this gets any browner, we're going to pour in our sizzling garlic oil. That smells really delicious right now. Put that here. You could add roasted red peppers to this. If you don't eat meat, you could use something like an artichoke heart, and maybe throw a can of drained chickpeas in here as well and use the same flavors. The herbs are very flexible, so I use parsley, and I actually have a little bit of chives that I chopped I'm going to add in. But if you have parsley, tarragon, dill or basil, a mixture of those. Any of that is all good to use here. It's going to give you a little bit of a different flavor profile. Okay, so that's nicely mixed. Smells good. So now we are going to take out our pasta. I'm actually just going to use the pan that I already had everything else in, just to mix to combine. Okay. If you really like garlic and you want to put a lot of garlic in, you could throw a couple fresh cloves into the pasta water and boil them along with your pasta. And at that point, once the pasta's done, you can fish those cloves out, smash them up, and add them to the mixture that we have here. It's really delicious, but it kind of mellows it out a little bit. So this is also looking just a little dry to me, so I'm going to add a little bit of extra olive oil. And then we can add some as we go along. A little bit of extra pasta water. I'm going to do about a 1/4 cup to start, and then I can always add more. Putting that cup in your colander is a great reminder. Save that. Now, why does that work and why are we doing that? It's an excellent question. Asked nobody. Because people always, I feel like this is something that's become very in vogue and maybe people didn't talk about it or think about it. But the starch in the pasta water will actually help a sauce to emulsify. So, toss that together. That's an escapees. Look how bright green that broccoli is. That was just from a couple minutes in the pasta water. Now, if you like to serve this, you could do a little bit of Parmesan. You could do a little bit of feta. You could do extra lemon zest, extra parsley. You could make some buttered breadcrumbs. So that's all nicely mixed. And this is a great way to really take a couple cans of tuna, feed a crowd. I've got some buttered breadcrumbs here that I actually made a little bit earlier. And I'm going to just plate up a little bit of this for myself. And for serving, you might want to do a little bit of pepper as well. I'm just going to sprinkle some crispy breadcrumbs on top. And there you have it, pantry pasta. Really quick and easy. That was super fast. Let's taste it. Always taste as you go. It might need salt, might not. We're going to find out. It's actually perfect. It's really good just as it is. We'll garnish with a little bit of chives for later. We'll set that aside. Okay. Pardon me. Okay. So that's one pasta done. I'm going to peek in on our cake real quick. Doing fine. Okay. So for this next pasta, we're actually going to not salt the water as much or really at all. Soba noodles really don't like salted water. I wish I knew why, but I actually don't know the science behind that. But generally speaking, they say do not use salted water in soba noodles. So soba noodles are made of buckwheat. You'll sometimes see them, soba noodle with yam. You could use any of this kind of thing you find. This is gluten-free usually, but you have to be careful. If you are celiac, definitely look on the back. A lot of them do have wheat flour. I'm not celiac, doesn't matter to me. So I'm going to go ahead and use something like this. But if you are more sensitive to gluten, this kind of a recipe can be made with any gluten-free pasta that you have. I've noticed recently that you go to the store and sometimes there's lots of pasta, sometimes it's really only 1 or 2 types, and so it pays to be flexible. Sometimes I've seen that there's literally no pasta, and so I ended up going to the Asian aisle and trying to find some other alternative noodles. I don't think this recipe would work as well with like a rice noodle, but definitely any other kind of gluten-free pasta will be fine with this. I'm going to show you a little trick to replicate this cooking water trick that we did when you don't have as much starch in the water. I'm going to kind of show you how to make a great sauce with that. So I've got my pasta water boiling here, ready to go, and I'm going to put new salt in it. And these take about, I would say, 5 minutes to cook. I usually just fish a couple out. When you're talking about how these are packaged, you usually get 2 or 3 to a package, and they have this great little washi tape around them. I find that one little bundle is equal to 1 serving, pretty much, unless you have super hungry people. So this recipe can be scaled up, can be scaled down. In this recipe, am going to be doing a kind of a Cheaters carbonara, which is a creamy, cheesy sauce. You could also do this as a cacio e pepe style, which is a slightly different sauce that uses pecorino, which is a sheep's milk cheese, a bit sharper. If all you have is just Parmesan, just pecorino, that's fine. Go with it. It will all taste good. One thing I will tell you is that if you have the grated, pre-grated stuff that comes in a jar with the green top, you know what I'm talking about. Do not make this recipe because it will not come out and you will be disappointed. And I do not want you to be disappointed. You need to buy a chunk of actual Parmesan or pecorino or both. I usually have both on hand from the store and grate it yourself. It's the one thing I really, all of these, what's the recipe, whatever. This one you really can't. Even the pre-grated stuff that comes in the bag, not good, because if you look at it, on the bag, there's usually, I think it says like cellulose, there's different things in there which stop it from clumping. And that's going to be a huge problem with us when we try to emulsify our sauce. So I'm going to teach you a trick that I've seen a lot of chefs do. I love the home cook Deb Perlman of Smitten Kitchen. She has a great blog. I've also seen David Chang of Momofuku do similar things like this. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to make a cheese paste beforehand that's going to be sort of pre-emulsified, and then we're going to incorporate that with our hot pasta to make a creamy sauce. This is heads and tails better than jarred Alfredo sauce from a jar. You're just never going to want to buy that again. It's so delicious. So let's put the pasta in, I think. We'll set a timer for 5 minutes and we'll see how we do. Okay. So reuse my oil container here. So we're going to do about half a cup of, this is freshly grated Parmesan. We're going to put it in here. We're going to do a couple grinds of pepper. Now this is like, if any Italian nonna were to see me, she would hit me with her rolling pin on this. This is so non-traditional. I love miso paste. It lasts literally forever. I have absolutely no idea how old this is. It's been in my fridge for like maybe 2 years. I keep putting it into smaller and smaller jars. You only have dark, totally fine. But I like sort of a white, mild miso because it's not too heavily flavored. It has really savory, umami flavor, which is mirrored in the Parmesan. It makes it taste really delicious. I have some butter, which I need to grab. I was softening it, and I was a little too zealous with my softening, and so I had to put it back in the fridge. You want it to be not melted and not hard, but just kind of a little mushy like that. Now, I'm going to do carbonara, which generally would call for pancetta or bacon. I don't eat a whole lot of meat. These days, I feel like it's a huge ethical issue too. We're asking people to come into our meat packing plants at great personal risk. And we're looking at maybe having meat shortages with all the difficulties involved. I'd rather just eat a little bit of meat, not as much meat, or no meat at all. So if you don't eat meat, you can do something like a sauteed mushroom with this, a package sliced thin, little garlic, a little butter, set that to the side and fold it in at the end. That will be perfectly delicious. Again, not traditional for carbonara, but it will taste really good. All right, so I've got my Parmesan, my pepper, my miso, and my butter. And don't worry about the amounts. I think it's about 3 tablespoons of butter. I will post a recipe for this, so do not fret about that. Now to this, we're gonna add a little bit of water. Now, I think let's go on over here. All right, so we have a couple tablespoons, and we'll start there, and then we will continue on. Let's blend it. So if you do not have a stick blender like I have here, you could do this on a little blender. It's a little bit easier with a bit larger portions. However, So just choose your container wisely here. I've got a 1 cup measure, which I think is going to work okay without stuff going everywhere. Blend. So I need a little bit more water. Just drizzle it in. You want to, worst case scenario, you put a little bit too much in. Don't stress out. Add a little tiny bit more cheese, and you'll be fine. All right. Just making a nice cake. Once it be kind of like a frosting consistency. So now I'm going to unhook this from that. Never ever go to look in the business end of one of these without disengaging it, or you will chop your finger off. I've heard horror stories. Safety first, always. We're going to spatula here. Sorry to get all right up in the camera. Okay. So I'll just scrape this off. Get every little last bit. Can you make this with margarine or something like that? I don't know. I have not tested it, but in theory, any fat should work. I'd be interested to see if someone tries this with like a, traditionally, you wouldn't even put the butter in, actually. You would just use the cheese and the water and make a paste for that. So this is actually like doubly cheating, and we're about to triple cheat. So just don't tell any Italians about this. So that's kind of what that looks like right there. Okay, so we're gonna do one more thing before we pull our pasta. I've got a little bit of precious bacon. This is from Walden Meat Share. It's really delicious. Again, I don't eat a lot of meat, so this is a way to stretch just a tiny bit along the way. Definitely optional. So we're gonna replicate the starchiness of the pasta water, since we have a pasta that has a little bit less gluten in it, with a teaspoon of cornstarch. So we're going to actually add a little bit of that cooking water to this, and we're going to add it all with our bowl. Okay, looks like that's done. So let's grab the silver noodles out. Let's test them first. Let's see. Only one way to know. Ooh, hot. Okay. Perfect. They should have a little bit of a bite if you've never made them before. Traditionally, silver noodles would be rinsed with cold water before use, and you could reheat them. Or they're very traditionally served cold, with like a chili or a scallion kind of a dipping oil. That's fine. I want to show you how you can use a non-traditional pasta in a, well, I guess both of this is pretty non-traditional. But you can make this just like normal pasta, but maybe if you are going to do it in a non-creamy sauce application, you may just want to go ahead and give it a quick rinse with cold water. But we don't want to do that because we actually want to get this all ready. So we're going to put our cheese mixture in the bowl. And this is like magic when this comes together. The reason I do it in the bowl and not in the pot is the pot tends to be a little bit too hot. And what you tend to have happen is a lot of cheese sticking to the bottom as it separates out. So no bueno. I'm going to add about, I would say, 1/8 of a cup, a couple tablespoons to start, hot water to my cornstarch, and it's going to immediately start to gel up a little bit. Whoopsies. What's that? So just going to mix that up until there's no clumps with that. We're going to add that to our cheese mixture. And now we're going to have tongs at the ready. I do think tongs is the only way here. We're going to add that. And we're going to mix, 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 mix. I tested this earlier, and I'm ashamed to say I pretty much ate what is essentially the whole bowl of this for my lunch. It was unbelievable. So we're going to keep going. Mix. Twist as we go. Smelling amazing. You can smell that sort of sweet, fruity note of Parmesan. It's really nice. I'm starting to see that everything is getting mixed together. All right, we're getting there. Much easier than the traditional ways of doing this. Now, if you want to do a cacio e pepe version, you would use pecorino cheese and a lot of black pepper. This is more of that carbonara, so we're just going to add a little black pepper. We're going to add some of this good stuff here. All right. I think even a dried shiitake mushroom would be pretty good in this. Mix that up. I've got some chives here that I'm going to use. Here we go. Mix that up. Now, I like maybe some scallion in this as well. I'm not putting any garlic or anything in this, so I've got some real gorgeous specimen from my garden here. Let's see. I did have the scissors here. I guess I'll just use my knife. I was going to be lazy and show you how to do this with the scissors, but not sure where that went. Okay, there we go. Got it. I do more knife work on camera, but I have tight quarters here and it's hard to see. So if you have a clean scissors, make short work of these. I'm a big proponent of saving your scallion ends. You can cut them off right about here, put them in water, and then stick them in a pot of dirt. A couple weeks, they'll grow back again. These are almost certainly scallions I planted in my garden last fall. So to cut at an angle here. Nice and thin. I wish you could smell this. It smells amazing. Now, can you add other vegetables to this? Yes. If I had peas, I would definitely have added some frozen peas right at that last minute again to the soba noodles and then scoop them out. You could add really any vegetable you want, although I do kind of like to keep this fairly simple. All right. Just give that a toss. Oh my goodness. And just if you can see this, the sauce is like really nicely emulsified, really beautiful. We're gonna top it with just a little bit of extra Parmesan and a little bit of pepper. I'm gonna take a peek at my cake now that we're at a point. I like for the cake to just be set in the middle because it does continue to cook a little bit in the pan when you pull it out. All right. Should have gotten a fork, not a spoon. That's okay. We're just going to taste for salt. The miso really makes it amazing. I really recommend the next time you're out, grab miso. It lasts forever. You can make soup with just miso with scallions and mix it with some water. Or you can add it to also, I like to add it to my tomato sauce too, actually. It adds a really nice low note, which is delicious. Yeah. You get the smokiness of the bacon, the sharpness of the chives and the scallions, and really just a nice dish. It's not low fat, but honestly, everybody wants comfort food right now. It's freezing. So a non-traditional soba noodle carbonara. There's that. A little clearing here. Clean as we go along with our cutting board now. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit how to do a citrus syrup. So you want to have about 2.5 cups of citrus rinds. You could even throw them in your freezer before you do this, or you can do it kind of as you go. I have done this same recipe, not even a recipe, honestly, just by putting stuff in a mason jar. I used and zested citrus rinds. I try to use organic if I can, because you don't want to get all the yuckies from the outside of the skin. If it's not organic, just make sure you're washing them very well. I have even done this when I'm not doing a big batch of things, putting it in a mason jar and just putting a little bit of sugar on top. And I'm going to show you what I've had. I did this yesterday. So I have some orange peel, lemon peel, and some grapefruit peel that's been zested, squeezed out. And I just put, I think about 1 cup of sugar with them. You want to do about 2.5 cups of the citrus rind to 1 cup of sugar, and you're going to toss them, and you let them sit minimum of 3 hours, maximum of like overnight in the fridge. Now, let's see, I'm going to need a bowl of some kind. Off-camera helper, will you hand me that white bowl, please? Magical off-camera helper, thank you. Okay. So if you don't have this device I'm about to show you, you can just use your hands. This is a great project for children with clean hands, because I didn't squeeze the dickens out of these. But I have my trusty little potato ricer, makes fluffy mashed potatoes. Additionally, it also makes interesting, I've used it to make spätzle before, which is like a German dumpling that you squeeze over boiling water. I've used it to some success to do that when I didn't have a colander with the right size holes. So now this syrup is delicious. I like to mix it just with some water, with some little bit of seltzer, really nice. You can do this with any kind of citrus, oranges, limes, lemons, anything like that. This is a great way to kind of get the absolute most out of your citrus before you throw it away. Even if you're not going to use citrus zest, I would still zest and maybe put it in a closed container in my freezer, and then you'll have it at the ready for any kind of recipe that you're working on. So you get the idea here. Oops, just come back here. Suppose if you were feeling really crazy about saving, you could maybe, if you had rinds that were clean of flesh, you could perhaps candy these further by putting them in a sugar syrup, but I'm not feeling that that ambitious today. I just want to maybe have a nice refreshing spritz later. You can do this in a colander too. That is my timer. Sticky hands. I'm going to give that just another second in the oven because I just touched it and felt like it really needed it. So now you could also, if you want, while you're infusing the citrus, use basil or even like a tarragon stem. That would be really delicious. You get a really nice citrusy, herby flavor. It'd be really delicious. So later, it'll go in the compost. Got my beautiful citrus syrup here. Now this will last. I'm going to strain it through a fine mesh strainer. This will last, I don't know, up to about a couple of weeks in the fridge at least, maybe longer. Really delicious. Okay. So, does anybody have any questions, concerns, kitchen disasters that you'd like to share, seeing as I've had a few of my own right here live on camera?
What happens if you don't have a potato ricer?
I would just use your hands or squeeze it through a colander. You could even just dump it over a colander and let it drain and then kind of press it down. But like I mentioned, if you have children with clean hands, get them into it. I love for children to have sort of a sensory experience. I think it's really important that they get into the kitchen and learn and feel pride also. Let's check the cake real quick and then I'll take a few more questions.
Can you what is when you take the zest of, can you zest the fruits before you make the
oh yeah,
oftentimes I'll have a leftover, I'll zest a lemon before I actually use it.
Correct. Yeah. And that will dry out your lemon faster, but that's a good way to kind of like make sure that you get that zest.
Yeah.
Either way is fine. If you have a lemon which you've sort of forgotten to do and you're like, oh no, it seems like it's kind of mushy and, you know, not quite firm enough to zest, this is a great application for that. So you can use a mix of zested, unzested citrus to go in here. I'm gonna taste. Let's taste this. Oh, I love grapefruit. It's so delicious. All right, real quick check on the cake because it should be done by now. Yep. Well, no. Using a soba noodle. I don't have a toothpick. It still needs a few more seconds. We're gonna give it a little turn in the oven. Now, I used to work on America's Test Kitchen, not in front of the screen, clearly, but I was one of their specialty shoppers. I dealt with a lot of the stuff in the kitchen there, sort of like the equipment type things. And so one of the things I learned is to always have a backup. So while that's still finishing cooking, I'll kind of show you what this comes out like. So look at this, rich, moist, fudgy. It's got those marks on top because once I cooled it on my rack, I then used that to bring it up again. This is probably a piece that if I was gonna stack it, I would actually just quickly shave that little piece off to make it even, but this is a cake which is really good on its own. I might serve this with a dusting of powdered sugar and some fruit for dessert. We've been known to just snack on this in our house, completely plain, good with whipped cream. If you do wanna make a layer cake, then you just have to make the recipe ×2 or 3. If you were ambitious and precise, you could probably torte these in half and stack them to make a bit more of a cake. I bet you could probably get away with doing it ×2, although I would usually just be a little bit lazy and do 3 1-inch layers. This is a very requestable. If you touch it, you can just see the moistness, and it has an amazing cocoa flavor. Really delicious with normal cocoa, insane with really good single origin stuff as well. So really good moist fudge. Let's cut into it. Knife here. So I think it's going to take at least another 5 or 6 minutes for that cake to finish. So let's cut in. Does anyone have any other questions while we're doodling around here? Oh my goodness. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful, really moist. Every time I make this, I can't believe that there's no eggs, no dairy in this. Someone might ask, can you make this with gluten-free flour? I have not tested it with like a 1-to-1 baking mix. Someone has, feel free to report back. I have a feeling it probably won't work as well. Gluten-free flours have different properties. If anyone needs gluten-free recipes, I'm happy to share, but I wouldn't go ahead and just put a gluten-free mix into this one. You know what, I have to have a bite, I can't stand it. Oh, really good, really moist. Now, if you like a different flavor instead of vanilla, you could add almond flavor, orange flavor. You could add the citrus zest that you've zested off. Orange and chocolate is fabulous. Towards the holidays, peppermint is really lovely as well, so you could do that. Any flavor that you like, you can add into this cake. My husband likes strawberry. I don't know if we have strawberry flavor. Does anyone have any other questions?
I noticed you have your scallions out. I don't know, is that for ease of the recipe, or is that actually a good way to store them? Like, do they do better out versus the fridge?
They'll be okay. Like, I mean, literally, I pulled these up out of my garden today. So my thinking is that, I mean, I sort of have them as set dressing here. There's a little bit of water in the bottom. Generally speaking, unless I was in that regrowing phase where I was growing, you know, the short end, I usually would do that on my windowsill, and I keep an eye on it, change the water out every day. And then once it started to kind of pop up again, I would shove it back in the garden. Really, once you buy a couple bunches of scallions, you never have to buy them again, and you can even do it in a pot. They'll grow literally anywhere. I don't know if you've ever found a really old bunch in your the back of your fridge, and they're all growing, and you're like, oh my gosh. So they're very hardy things. I would say I would probably do exactly this with a little bit less water and put it in the fridge just to keep them. If you don't have the space, then I would wrap them in a very lightly damp paper towel, put them in a baggie, and put them in the fridge, and they'll be perfectly happy there.
That's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. But these are
Did I miss? Oh. Did I miss? You said there was a way to make salt. If you don't, you said there was a way to salt. You were going to teach us.
Okay. So right at the beginning. So I would just say I've worked for a lot of people as a personal chef that are watching their salt, and so I had a long conversation with their nutritionist about, you know, can I salt the pasta water? Should I? And the nutritionist said, go ahead, salt the pasta water. It doesn't take up that much salt when it's in there, and it's gonna, if you have to, not put as much salt on the end because you're watching your sodium, especially with these recipes where maybe you're using a little, you know, I would say if you're watching your sodium, go easy on the capers, go easy on the olives. Obviously, those are high in sodium. You may not want to add any extra salt. What I would do in that case, definitely go ahead, go crazy, salt your pasta water. Use a little bit less of those salty add-ins, and then what you want to do is up the acid. So you want to add, maybe instead of half a lemon, add juice of a whole lemon. And you maybe, even if you have an extra lemon, add a little bit more zest. If you have an all-purpose salt-free seasoning mix, I really like Penzeys Spices makes a great one called Mural of Flavor, which is salt-free and it has already some citrus zest, things like that. You could add that in as well to give it a little bit of a boost, adding flavor without adding too much extra salt. Let's test that cake one more time before our time is up together. So I have a few moist crumbs, but let's just get along. So the one time this cake doesn't take exactly half an hour. We must have a kitchen goblin. Anyways, any other questions, concerns? Next week we're going to be doing, Corinne, is next week are we doing kids first? Is that right?
Yes, next week we'll be doing some kid snacks, and then the following week we're doing breads.
Yes. So next week we're going to be doing bite-sized kid snacks. These are fun things that you could get the kiddos involved, help making. Honestly, they're really delicious even for adults. They're not a lot of ingredients, healthy, get some sneaky vegetables in there. Easy on the budget, things will stretch out neat. We're gonna do some apple chicken balls. We're gonna do some broccoli and potato tots with optional cheese. They are addictive. So we'll do that next week. And then the week after, we're gonna focus on quick breads, which is not exactly what it sounds like. Everybody here, I think, probably has made about 1 billion loaves of banana bread at this point. Banana bread's awesome. If people are really dying for my banana bread recipe, I will definitely tagging on at the end of that that talk that we do. That being said, I'm more focusing on what to do if you don't want to go to the store and get a loaf of bread. Sourdough does take a little bit of skill. I know a lot of people have taken that up. I'm going to show how to use some of your sourdough discard if you have it to make things. You should never be throwing that away. It's very valuable in terms of the fact that flour is hard to find. But we're going to be working on some flatbreads that use yeast, don't use yeast. We'll learn how to do a whole wheat roti. A lot of times people haven't been able to find all-purpose flour, but they've been able to find whole wheat. So I'm going to kind of show you how to make do with what you have, different levels. No yeast, sourdough starter, or sourdough. I can't tackle a full sourdough loaf in the time that we have since it's a multi-day process with overnight rests. But if anyone does have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to guide you through. I've had a lot of friends who have had success with continued effort on that front as well. All right.
Has anybody been cooking anything new, trying any new recipes at home that they would like to tell us about?
I have a quick question on bread.
Oh,
I have a loaf of bread in the oven, and I've made bread before, but it doesn't want to come out of the pan.
Uh-oh. Okay, and is this like a sourdough in the...
No, it's just a white sandwich bread.
And are you using like a loaf pan?
Yeah, glass one.
How are you preparing the pan? Are you oiling it?
I put a little oil in it, yeah.
What I would recommend next time is make a parchment paper sling or even a foil sling. So it doesn't have to go the whole, I mean, depending on how much parchment or foil you have, you could do the whole length of it. I would probably go side to side, or I would go side to side or the long way. You could do kind of the whole thing if you wanted to be super retentive about it, but one or the other or both, just to give you a little something to help get it out with, I think would be okay.
All right, what do I do with the one that's there now?
Good question. So it's in the oven, and so have you tried to take it out yet? Or is
Yeah, I have, and I thought I'd put it back in because the bottom with glass, you can see that did not look totally cooked.
Okay, so
Top looks fine.
Here's what I would do. I would let it finish. Now, if you have a thermometer, if it's not an enriched bread, I believe for a non-enriched bread, the internal temperature should be about 210 degrees. I'm not quite, I think it might be either a little higher or a little lower if it has a lot of fat in the dough, but you can quickly look that up online. But I would give it a poke in this very center, if you don't mind the aesthetic.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I would just honestly, everyone should own a cheap digital thermometer. There's no better thing than knowing for sure, especially for things like, meats and things, but breads as well. I almost always for my sourdough loaves, I'm checking the internal temperature because it's really hard to tell. And oftentimes I find I have to cook it for long. I find I would want to pull it maybe 10 minutes before it actually is fully cooked in the middle, which can really lead to dense inner crumb. So yeah, next time use a foil sling. This time what I'm going to say is let it finish cooking, take that internal temp if you need to, and then maybe once you pull it, let it sit on a rack. Don't try to take it out of the pan, and maybe put a little bit of foil over the top of it so that the steam may actually help it to loosen up out of that pan. Give it half an hour or so, give it a poke, maybe another half hour, and you may be able to kind of get a butter knife or something in there just to loosen it up. That would be my first move.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Any other like kitchen disasters or new discoveries?
Where did you go to culinary school, or didn't you?
I didn't actually. I was I had considered and I got accepted to NECI up in Vermont, and I had really wanted to go to the Culinary Institute of America, but I was one of those unfortunate, I wouldn't say I'm a millennial, I'm an exennial, what came right before, and I graduated right during the beginning of the recession, and I just couldn't see my way through to taking on. I just finished my undergrad in 2007, and so the thought of going back to school, going into more debt, made me crazy. So I actually got a job as a cook, nanny, home manager for a wonderful family. I actually still have that relationship with them today, as I cook for them at least once a week. I have for about the past 12 years. And that's sort of how I started cooking for families. I'm now a member 2 years in running of the USPCA, which is the United States Personal Chef Association. So we are a coast to coast association of people who cook in people's homes. We love to make beautiful food. And also I've taken a lot of, especially these days, I made sure that all my food safety training is really up to snuff. With the current health crisis, there's not too much extra that chefs who are already doing their jobs need to do, other than maybe wearing a mask when you're at the preparation level of food that's not going to be cooked anymore. If I was going to cook this for people and give it to them, I would put a mask on as soon as I was done with the veggie prep. Now, obviously, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I follow what the CDC says and what all of the food regulations say, but I would have probably popped a mask on at the back end of all of this, so that any finished food I would not be breathing on. And I probably would have used gloves as well for the back half of it. Anything that wasn't going to be cooked up to a high temp, I would have been a little bit more cautious if I was going to be sharing that with people outside of my own bubble. Any other questions, concerns? What's everybody having for dinner tonight?
I'm having bluefish, fresh caught from the docks.
Oh,
I know.
who are you using for your fish supplier?
Do you know Sven Fish? Have you heard of
Oh, I love Sven. I just ordered. I just got excellent sushi grade tuna from them last week for
Yeah.
some
How
clients,
I
and
hear it's really good.
oh my gosh, this tuna was to die for. We made poke bowls, and then the next day I had a little bit. I dropped off the tuna for my clients because they were just going to do something simple with it. Didn't need me to cook it. But we at home, I ordered a couple extra pounds. We made poke bowls. We also then grilled it the next day. It was absolutely fabulous. Sven Fish, so SVEN Fish, fabulous. They go right down to the docks. I would double thumbs up.
Yeah, and he does more besides fish. They get meat, like grass-fed meat and cheeses from Vermont, and sometimes eggs and maple syrup.
Oh yeah, everyone needs that person.
Very
really,
eclectic.
I used, so when this all started, I started doing a bunch of different things to reduce my time in the grocery store. I try to only go once a week. I still have clients that I'm working for with social distancing. So I do have to kind of go in about once a week just to get, the things I can't get anywhere else. But I've been doing boxes from Russo's in Watertown. I've been doing deliveries from Misfit Market We do great organic produce. I've been getting meat share from Walden Local Meat and then sort of distributing it amongst everybody. And then week on week when I need fish, I use like a Sven fish or something like that, because really just the quality is so much higher. And you don't have to go to the store, which is just fabulous. I think this is going to be very good for local agriculture. We all need to support our local producers and farmers. Alrighty, folks, it's looking like we're getting close to the end. Corinne, were there any more questions or concerns that have popped up that I should address before we break for dinner?
I don't think so. I didn't see anything in the chat. So if anybody has any last things, now is your time, and then I'll wrap us up.
Corinne, do we have to sign up for the next two?
Yes, so there are separate registration links for those two. I can send out an email to everybody with the links for those. So I'll send that out to you when I send out the recipes from tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you, Meryl.
Thank you. That was
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great learning experience.
Tonight. I hope this has inspired you.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoy the cake. Save the peace.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. And yes, I hope that we can see you for the next 2 weeks for our additional cooking classes. The library is also hosting, we have a weekly knitting club on Fridays. That'll be starting tomorrow. We have an open all ages craft and chat on Mondays. We have some book clubs, all sorts of stuff. So if you have any thoughts, if you have any feedback on tonight's program, I would absolutely love to hear them. I'm sure that Meryl wants to hear all of your praise. I only have good things to say. So thank you all so much for coming. And thank you so much, Meryl. And
thank you so much, Corinne. I really appreciate the opportunity. And ahead of our other classes, if anyone does have any topics or things they want to bring up, please feel free to reach out, because I'll be happy to kind of do research and address them during that time on whatever topic is related as well.
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night,
Enjoy dinner,
everybody.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.